We are broadcasting on SpiceFM around the country: Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi. We are on KTN Home for the next 1 hour, and we are also live streaming the show, as we always do, on SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and www.spicefm.co.ke to the world, like Desmond Blair says, watching from Grenada. And others as well across the globe. A very good morning to you. We have a man in the studio. He's white bearded. He's just come from the mountain having a conversation with the Most High. He has the day's proverb. Siti Muga, a.k.a. Moses.
Right. Our proverb comes from the community of the Samburu Nation. Nyuat Mara Nkidimat. Translated into English, success is not accidental. You must put in a lot of effort.
Success is not accidental.
No.
You must put in a lot of effort. Must work hard at it.
It's actually putting a lot of effort goes beyond just working hard, because most people, when asked, will tell you that they work hard every day. But now for success to be what it is, then a little more than the normal hard work has to be put into it. Yes.
Let's talk about working hard and very hard and getting the benefits of it. Introducing the guests for this hour is the very Reverend Canon Sammy Wainaina, Provost of the All Saints Cathedral of the Anglican Church of Kenya. Provost, karibu sana to the Situation Room once again.
Asante sana.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you guys.
You're looking well.
I am well indeed. Thank God.
Indeed. You talk about working hard. The people in your neck of the wood, when they're looking as good as you are, and you tell them, hey, you're looking well, it's just no kugeria money. Very modest. Being very modest about it. No kugeria money. Tunajaribu tu hapa na pale.
Ni effort kidogo tu.
Just, you know.
And then others will tell you, we thank God.
Yeah. We thank God. We thank God. In everything we give thanks.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Canon, the last time you were here, we talked about what we're going to be talking about today, which is politics in church. We're going to angle it a bit differently today about church and politics. And we had a conversation on Monday with the Archbishop of the Anglican Church of Kenya, who's also the bishop of your diocese.
He was in the Situation Room.
Yes.
All right.
On the phone.
Okay.
It's a bit different.
We need to bring him here.
Yes. Next time he'll be here. He had just come out of from Butere, where he did what he did and he said what he said. And we asked him, so, Mr. Archbishop, Your Grace, why were you saying what you said? He said, in fact, let me give you leakage. In my next Sunday sermon, I am going to issue orders to the clergy in the Anglican Church. And you will be told, the very Reverend Canon Sammy Wainaina, do not join those who go to politicians with delegations talking about what the country needs. I've given you leakage. That's what's going to be happening. So we have seen this conversation taking place, you know, church and politics, politicians being given the opportunity to speak in church at the pulpit, and then that whole conversation turning political. And the debate has been, why should we bar our political leaders from speaking? I know at the All Saints Cathedral, you're one of those that says that very same thing. But why?
He doesn't just say it.
He practices it.
Yes.
Strictly.
You will come in as a congregant and leave as a congregant with all your leadership and all your politics. Now, that is me saying it, of course. That's not right. That's not what the right reverend says.
You know, guys, we got it all wrong when we started identifying people in churches. Maybe it started out of goodwill, but that has been abused. And I think what the Archbishop did in Butere was to draw a line, which was, to me, very, very good. You see, on a Sunday, I only have worshippers. People don't come there as doctors or professors. They just come as worshippers. The moment I start defining them according to their professions, then I should not just give the politicians an opportunity to bring greetings. I should bring doctors as well, because there are also organizations of doctors or politicians, all manner of organizations. They should be given an opportunity to bring greetings and announce to their members
Their plans.
In the past. I've said it here, but I've also said it also in Cathedral, we overrate our political leaders. And I think moving forward, and that's what the Archbishop was saying, is no. They are just leaders. They are workers. They are employed by Kenyans. They have no special right to dictate things. And you see them, because you can imagine how much it would cost to do a political rally. It's expensive. But there is a captive audience in a funeral. You see them fighting over that.
Yep.
How shameful can our leaders be that you're supposed to go console with those who have died and you hijack the program? So we overrate them, we give, and I think the Archbishop said, no, please come as worshippers, and that should be the new normal in the Anglican Church. Whether other churches want to pick that or not, that is their own decision. But in terms of we, the foot soldiers of the Archbishop, we will implement what he advised. And he didn't just advise, he practiced his advice. So on Sunday, I don't have politicians in church. And I've been in the cathedral now 11 years, and I have practiced that. And this fallacy that politicians come to bring money, church is not sustained by politicians. The other question I would like to bring in our discussion today is, when a politician keep hopping from one church to another, when do they get spiritual nourishment? Sit down, be fed, bring your soul to the Lord. Most of our politicians spiritually are bankrupt because their work is hopping from one place to another. So we have two problems. Politicians come to church ready to speak, and you have a clergy who sees them and recognizes them. That's where the problem is. So politicians should come to church not expecting. But I know they wouldn't come. And it's fine if they don't want to come. They can stay. But let's make worshipping spaces just that.
The expectation of many a politician, however, Canon, is that they will come to places of worship and be given that opportunity, because that has historically been the practice. It doesn't matter. In the Anglican Church, in other churches, it has been. Whether we're looking outside of Nairobi, outside of the cathedral, in parishes, in rural Kenya, in parishes in other parts of the country, that has been the practice. So from now,
that is recent.
Sure. So, but now we're saying we are stopping this going forward.
Exactly.
Politicians with their expectation, would it then be the business of the church to now deal with what that expectation is? Or are we saying, regardless of how you feel, regardless of what has happened in the past, we are not having it anymore?
And it's not that the church is intolerant to politicians. What we are only telling them is, I think you've abused some goodwill. They are our leaders. We love them. We respect them. By the way, if they behaved in a certain way, I don't think the church would be too strict. But Kenya, being a corrupt nation, because we are realizing if we don't draw a line. Look at Moi's time. Moi would go to church, but he never did politics in the church. He never. That Mzee, with all the challenges he had, and his government respected the place of worship. Look at Mzee Kibaki. What a man we had there. Would go to church, not even say a word. Now, it is during this time, the Uhuru Ruto governance, that has brought a lot of, and you know, separation of religion and government is actually important. They have a role, we have a role, we correlate, we contribute. Yes, but there should be a line that you can't cross here, because I have never been invited to a political rally to do a speech. And when I'm invited, it's only a prayer, and it should be written and short.
You're never invited to set the moral standard, for
No.
example,
Pray
about how
for food.
Yeah.
So you cross into my
Territory.
forte, and you want now to dictate. And you know what happened in Moranga, where politicians fought at the altar.
Yeah.
And
In
that's
Kenya
what
as well.
that's what we are saying. And we are not saying that the church has been the holy of the-
Squeaky clean.
No. Let's accept where we've gone wrong, and that's what the Archbishop said. We've done it wrong, but moving forward, we can't. And again, now moving to 2022, it's dangerous. People will fight in church.
But Reverend, we can point fingers at politicians, rightfully so, but there's something Eric brings into our discussions every so often. And on this one, I am compelled to agree with him. Our congregants love politicians, and they also love to listen to politicians. So here you are as a church. When a politician stands up, sometimes they're even happier and more animated than when the preacher stands up to speak.
And the media gets excited.
The media propagates it as though there's no tomorrow. Yes, we do.
I agree totally with Eric's submission and yours.
I've peppered it a bit, but yes.
It is true. And I know of one Anglican bishop who was roughed up in a funeral by saying no to politicians. And the congregation booed the bishop because they want to hear the politician.
Yep.
In the cathedral, I've gone through such pressure. But I think because they know I have a strong stand, no one would dare. No one would dare. And I remember the day NASA presented their papers, they came to church, to All Saints that day. I don't know whether they were expecting to speak, and the media were there, and I stood, and I told them, media, you have one choice, to sit down. This is a worshiping space. This movement that I'm seeing here, you'll be out in the next 1 minute. Can you be seated now? And you know what? They sat. I told them these politicians have come to worship. Nobody spoke. And at the end, when I was giving the benediction, I asked them to stand wherever they were. And I told them, God looks for David and we don't know who David is in this context. If he's amongst you, the NASA group, amen. God only looks at the heart, not at the physical. We will look mostly at the physical. But if David is not here, God will find him wherever he is. And I prayed and gave benediction, and we went out. And I thought I would be in very bad books with the politicians. But all of them were like, Provost, how do you control your church in a way that it is safe for everyone and everybody feels? But let me tell you, a few months after, I was out of the country. And my deputy was in a lot of problems. Because the same even members of the cathedral were passing notes to him. It's like kind of saying the boss is not here.
Yeah, who are you?
Hello. And there was a politician. And you know, he said, no, cathedral has a standard. In other words, it's true that the congregants can demand, but clergy can create cultures. And I have seen it. I've never been under any duress because I have made it clear. And it's not because I hate, it's because I want to treat everybody well. So clergy actually will be under a lot of pressure moving forward because politicians will not just hear the Archbishop and the Catholic Conference of Bishops. They will not just hear. Look at Sunday. They will start pushing.
They will still be
They
there.
will push. And if I was the clergy, I would not refer to them. I would do the service, give the benediction, finish.
There's pressure, like you said, from the congregants. How do you deal with the congregants? Even as you say, yes, instilling the culture in church, But you need to make us understand
Eric, when
what you're thinking of.
When I became provost, I remember I did a sermon and I told them early. So what I said in January, it looked like it was new. Me, I did it when I became provost, and I told them, you know what? During my tenure as provost, the following will not happen to this congregation. There will be no politicians here. This podium will be a place of worship, purely. And people clapped. And I told them, so that you don't waste your claps, did you understand what I meant? I meant your brothers and sisters, when they come here, they will not talk. They clapped again. I said, let me repeat the third time. And I repeated again, they clapped. Then I said, okay.
Okay, now we
You seem to be understanding. I'm telling you, no. And I'm doing this to secure this space. It is for public. It's for everyone. Let's all be treated the same way. Why am I saying this? I've realized leaders have, especially religious leaders, have an opportunity, and I think that is discussion today. What is their role in matters of governance and politics?
Sure. And
It is possible.
And there's a question right there, Canon, that why is it, and why is it that we're saying, all right, politicians, there's a space here that we will keep for worship. But at the same time, we expect leadership and guidance on how to operate in a political scene as citizens of the country, being given the moral compass by leaders in the church. How do we draw the line between the two? Why is it that church leaders can give direction on how to run in the country? However, we're saying politicians don't have an opportunity to come and speak to a congregation.
As I said earlier, there's a line that is drawn between politics, or what you'd call political governance, and religion. Let them be separate. However, they are interrelated. If you look at the history of Kenya, for example, the church has played an important role in matters of education and health, or even governance. The church has, or even, let's talk of religious community, has. But there is context that shapes the message. If it was in an ODM rally, they will sell their product.
Yeah.
If it is UDA, they will sell their product. And they shouldn't attack one another. If you sell Coca-Cola, just sell Coca-Cola, and it's fine. It doesn't mean Pepsi is not good. You tell us why. In the church, there we have a different product. And we are guided by the gospel. And we don't just react. We look at Scripture, we interpret Scripture, we apply Scripture to address the context. And if the context is political, Scripture doesn't stop only at taking people to heaven. The gospel is a tool of liberation. And it has been used historically to set people free. So we clergy have a mandate. And we must say this space here is for this particular one. Again, politicians, if they are believers, they need nourishment. So don't come dictating the kind of nourishment. We know what you need because we are led of God. We take time to think and theologize and reflect on what is happening.
So as you draw that line, you will hear then the pushback from the politicians is, all right, so clergy deal with matters of spiritual nourishment. Leave the politics to the politicians.
What is the definition of spiritual nourishment? As I said, we are not just in the business of taking people to heaven. Eventually we will. But we are here, down here on earth for a reason. Therefore, matters that affect me. You see, I didn't come from heaven this morning, Eric, and landed here. Then in the evening, I'll go back. I live in this country.
You're a Kenyan, you're a taxpayer, you're a consumer.
When fuel is increased, I'll go to the same petrol station. All Saints doesn't have a petrol station. I'll go to the same supermarket. In other words, we are affected by decisions that are made by our government.
Okay.
Politics is so important that it can't be left to politicians alone.
All right. But then can you draw a line between governance issues where you talk generally about, okay, the price of fuel, the taxation regime in the country and all, and leave the actual politicking to the politicians? I'm bringing this in the context of now we are hearing clergy are offering to mediate between the political battle between the president and his deputy. None of them has initiated it. It's clergy that's initiating. That has nothing to do with governance of all fuel prices.
No. Let's define politics. The politics you're talking about is inter-party politics. We will not be involved in inter-party politics where we will tell you the kind of president that the kind of party. We'll not talk about party politics. But there are governance issues that are important for church leaders or religious leaders to get involved. So in the church, we will not tell you ODM, UDA, or are they called Jubilee? No, we will not go into such. The presidency belongs to all of us. Whether it's a Jubilee or ODM presidency, it affects. That office they carry there is not personal. It actually belongs to the electorate. And we as a church, we are there as individuals, but also institution. So where we are able to mitigate peace, that is the role of the church. Can I give you 4 A's? Number 1 is agenda setting. Recently, the Archbishop of the Anglican Church asked the question, said, do not just talk about economic models. Answer the question, why are Kenyans poor? Who made them poor? And I'm using that as an example on how the church can set the agenda. It's very easy for every political party to come up with models on how they will address the poverty in this country. And I've had many, bottom up and bottom something else. But all of them are actually saying the same
It's about the economy.
They are talking about poverty. But ask yourself, why do we have a few Kenyans that are so wealthy, yet the majority are poor? The church should set the agenda. Let's talk about it. Let's address the problem. The second one is accountability. Who, for example, stole the COVID money? Do you know, since the directive was given that I think in a month's time, I should have received a report?
Yep.
That was
last year.
That was last year.
Yeah.
Up to today, we don't know who stole the money. Now,
a month is not over.
Oh,
No,
it's not.
no, it's not.
Okay, depends on the length of some
Depends on your
months.
definition of the length of a month.
So the church is not just there to preach and make people feel good. The church, actually not even the church, let me say the gospel makes us uncomfortable because it will ask us difficult questions. So when we apply it to our context, you ask difficult questions and people will not like you for that. So who stole the money? We need to account for every action until impunity is annihilated in this country. And the church should not stop to talk about that. Who is giving, for example, superior weapons to bandits in Laikipia? Where do they get them from? It tells you there are people within our political class that are corrupt and they are interested. And it's not just happening, it's happening closer to our election. And so matters of accountability are very important. Number 3 is awareness. And this is about education, educating and empowering people. Civic education is important, and that should happen at the pulpit. And it's not just a subject that should come closer to the election. It is something that constantly we need to speak. In fact, I find it offensive that there are clergy who will go throughout the year speaking other things, but not empowering their people. Awareness is important. I've had like people saying we are not going to do elections because all these people are thieves and all that. Okay, a pastor should pick that as a subject, be able to address that, but tell people you can make changes. It all depends on you. It's like this whole issue of the petroleum now and the prices. You know, politicians will talk as if they never got involved. But it was Parliament that did it. And so who are our enemies, Kenyans? It's actually our own leaders. And if we feel they are not serving us, with your vote, you can take them home and only go for those you feel. It's actually your choice. Go for corrupt ones, you will feel it. The last four is agreement promotion through dialogue, mediation, diplomacy, peace building. And we see that even in the Beatitudes, Jesus talking about the role of believers. Like what you're asking me, Eric, about why should we be involved about the peace between the president and his deputy? It is us to be involved in mediation, in dialogue. That is the work of religious community, and particularly the church.
You know, it isn't the first time the Anglican Church is doing this. The second African Archbishop of the Anglican Church of Kenya, Manasseh Kuria, did something similar. And if you look at the role that some of those older prelates did, they were very hands-on in what you would call the social issues of their country. Very, very directly involved. Now, that's the good part of what I'm saying. The second part of what I'm going to say is not so pleasant, because up until that statement was made by the Conference of Bishops in the Catholic Church, and what the Archbishop of the Anglican Church did at Butere, prior to that, what we call as the Christian religious leaders had let us, as Kenyans, down completely. Why do I say this? I look at the Muslims. I look at the Hindus. It doesn't even occur to you to consider that a politician would go into any of those establishments. It doesn't arise. And they also know it doesn't arise. It's not possible. Now, when we secularize our faith, and you are in the church and you feel as though every time you're in a church, you get the feeling that you're in a political rally. You actually forget, where am I exactly on this particular day? It is the role of the church. If there's a turnaround, it is to be commended. But the leadership role that the church is supposed to play is something they appear to have abrogated. Sure. And what they're doing now is catching up, but that is the problem. You're catching up when somebody else has taken over your role. And somebody else is considered more important than you in your own house.
We talked about this. Last time I was here,
yes,
I think it was early February.
Yes, and I expressed the same opinion.
Yeah, you did. And by the way, even that time I said, blame the church. Blame me. I'll accept where we are wrong. But you see, that time when I had spoken in January during my series of sermons, I looked like the devil. Even the clergy themselves were wondering, what is bothering the provost? And by the way, and I'll say this without trying to spiritualize anything, I actually felt in my spirit God telling me, speak. Because if you don't, at this point, it will come a time that you'll not be able to talk. I want to agree totally that it came a time when the church became too comfortable with the political class. We became too... And you know why? It is mostly to do with because they are maybe making a contribution to a project that we are doing. And there's a lot of projects that are happening in church. While it's a good thing, it brings a lot of competition, and you're looking for resources.
Yep.
So you start opening the secularization you're talking about. You start opening the space, and it becomes...
it takes over.
Yeah, it is taken over.
Yeah.
Yes, and I don't think it's too late.
No.
If you realize...
It isn't too late.
If you realize you've done something wrong, even as an individual or an institution, correct it.
Sure.
But now it will be tougher for the church.
Infinitely.
However, I think as you do that, it's also important for the church to introspect and ask yourself that the second A of the 4 A's, accountability. What role did the church play in the society finding itself where it is finding itself today? I'll give you the context of why I say this. I see this as the battle, for example, in what has been happening in our society between the evangelical and the Pentecostal. You, the evangelicals, with your set way of doing things and the way you speak to us as the congregants, we started seeing people leaving your churches to go into the other smaller churches and forming smaller breakaway churches that we now call Pentecostal churches. The thing that you talked about, agenda setting and awareness empowerment, is what they were not getting from these other churches, because these other churches are talking about prosperity gospel and telling us about our life and the way to live our life and how we can actually even get better in our lives. Why were people leaving your churches to go to these other churches? When they go to these other churches, those churches have the pressure of building churches as big as the All Saints Cathedral and others. So we have to bring in people to contribute for our Harambes. Politicians, come in. Introspection, accountability.
Indeed.
Provost.
You see, these 4 A's that I've talked about are not just about them. It's about each one of us. Us as an institution, as a church, we also need to go through this. When I talk about accountability to a politician, I should introspect myself. Whether am I accountable? When we talk about awareness, we are not just telling them, but we are also making ourselves aware. So I hear what you're saying. But today, you'll see people coming to the traditional church, such as Moses is going to do soon, because he's realizing that actually, and here I'm not saying that that the Pentecostals are worse. No, not even the evangelicals and Catholics have their own. We have
everybody has their own issues.
Yes.
Actually, let me tell you, it's a societal problem.
Yes.
And the church doesn't exist outside of that society.
Yes.
So the same people I'm serving on a Sunday are the same people the politicians are targeting.
Yeah.
So I don't have my people. And and that's where, if we preach the true gospel, it cuts both sides.
Provost, you actually have your people. And I'm going to explain what I mean by this. When you have taught and trained your people well, even when they relate to politicians, it'll be from a certain position.
I agree. Totally.
Not a compromised one, which is what we're dealing with. And I'm coming from the position, this is what I think. I believe that you're talking about the Christian faith, the very ethos of it, it's supposed to be a resistant movement.
Exactly.
If you look at it and how it was constructed, that's what it is.
It's a liberation movement.
Yes, it is. I like the word resistance better, though. So, it's a liberation movement.
Theologically,
yes.
Liberation is better than resistance.
Resistance, yes.
But I agree totally.
Yes.
But you see what? I keep talking about All Saints Cathedral because that's where I'm sure.
You are.
And that's where I've been, and that's where I'm responsible. Other pastors to whom much is given, much will be required. I have made enough awareness to my members. I have taught them. I expect them to behave in a certain manner. But there's something I wanted to bring. While it is true that these things don't happen in the temples or in the mosques, they actually happen, but they happen differently. Their culture is slightly different. But isn't it a contradiction that a Muslim would come to the church to do politics? Haven't you seen some?
Yep.
Because we allow them to do
Exactly. And I wanted to agree, that's how low we have accepted ourselves to go. That them they will not do wherever they are, but they can come to church and do it.
But they know in their own setup, they will not be allowed.
Now, what is required is churches working together. Denominationalism will not help in the resistance, if I use your word. We need to form strong alliances as Christians and define who we are and what is our role, and we become faithful to that. Now, lack of discipline then amongst the Christian denominations is one of the challenges we have to grapple with. But I could, because like what the Archbishop did on Sunday and what the Catholic Conference of Bishops did, I think what Monday?
Yes.
I would have expected the evangelical, the EAKs,
Yes.
EAKs to come up. And then, instead of shooting too many bullets, why don't you come together, NCCK, EAK, Catholic Conference of Bishops, come together, speak with one voice, and say, we, the church. Now, extend it even further to other religious communities. Then make one stand as a religious community. That way, the religious community will influence the agenda.
Provost,
of Kenya.
there's the assumption, though, that everybody then is speaking with would be coming together with a unified voice. But even as we spoke with His Grace on Monday, and some of what we've heard from people is that some people, again, don't have an issue with this. He did tell us that he would like to urge members of other denominations to actually come into this. He did say this. However, are there not competing issues whereby there are some people who don't have a problem, even in the evangelicals, in other denominations, even within the Anglican Church, in other parts of the country, who don't have an issue, for example, taking contributions and being very loud about it, and then using that as an inroad to allow these speeches to take place in church. So coming together and say that there must be unification of purpose could go against the competing issue whereby some don't have a problem.
Can I add to something that you're saying there? Could I? May I? You see, we're looking at politicians as the enemy, and they're not.
And I think the enemy here is
no, it's
within.
Secularism, what the church refers to as the world. The world has gotten into the church and become the church. So when you allow politicians, it's not the politician's fault. The politician has just found space that he's been allowed to operate in.
Indeed.
And he will operate in that space.
What is this secularism? I want to throw in a completely dirty bone into this whole conversation.
Why don't you do just that?
You see, when you talk about like Christianity and the fragmentation of Christianity, you start from one big church and then you start going into the Anglican church, and then you go now into breakaways. What is driving that? Every time there's such a splinter, the bigger one is left to brand those ones as being secular. And it's secularism that's driving them to come and splint.
Eric, not
we see
necessarily.
this.
Yeah.
Why is it that we see so much of splintering of the Christian faith into so many small denominations and even smaller churches that are just coming up every day? There's a church that's breaking away and breaking apart.
Eric, it happens to all religions.
Yes, but in this country, we see it a lot in terms of the Christianity, and you're going to tell me because of the higher numbers. But why is it that's happening?
I'm not even going to say it's because of the higher numbers.
So may I finish the point?
Please.
We have, for example, seen the big churches, Anglican, Catholic, PCA, AIC, the African Independence, and then nowadays we have every small manner of church coming up. That tells you something, and that's why I was saying, I think you need to step back and ask yourselves, why are people moving further and further away into their own small communions? Why are they doing that? And is it possible then to have one unifying message that brings them all together where they'll agree to everything that you're saying?
Did you want to say something about secularism?
Mr. Moses.
This name is going to stick and I'm going to blame you. The thing about secularism, it did not start in the 21st century. No. If you're a student of the Bible, no matter how peripheral, you will find that it's something that happened before. See, every setup on this planet survives because it has rules by which the members abide.
Yeah.
Whether it is parliament, whether it is your community, wherever you come from, whether it is the circle you belong to. Now, if I'm referring to the Christian faith, it has a set of rules by which it actually
operates.
Yes. Now, they are clear. The thing is, they're clear. What you are calling divisions is when opinions differ. And that is not necessarily a bad thing.
Nope.
Because what it does, it allows for the diversity that we call or we say we have as human beings. You will find, for instance, that many of the breakaway evangelical churches were once the members of those who supposedly broke away, were domiciled in the Anglican Church. In fact, one could argue that the Anglican Church has been the biggest provider of these other, yes, you could argue, yes. So, and they don't preach anything different. Not really.
No.
Not really.
The style can change, but it's the same thing.
Yes.
But I wanted to help you and listeners to understand secularism. Secularism is what is outside of the Bible. And again, if you read the same Bible, you see attempts to bring ungodly standards into godly matters.
Godly matters.
And there is always pressure to do that. So secularism is something that happens. Look at even if the Muslim community. Today, they deal with matters of terrorism. It may not be a religious teaching, or if there is something small that is said there, somebody wants to radicalize
has
that.
convoluted it.
Yes, and amplified it. So, human beings with our sinfulness, we are bound to do that. So, that is secularism.